Hello and welcome to a new video. Last time I promised we'd get into what kind of law a free society actually needs. And then I realized I couldn't. Not yet. Because there's more basic questions I've been quietly skipping this whole time actually. What even is freedom and what is it for? Everybody says they're pro-freedom, or at least I think most people say that. Almost nobody actually agrees on what the word actually means. And if you get that part wrong, you build the wrong everything on top of it. So here's my claim for today, and I know I'll annoy some of you, but freedom is not doing whatever you want. It's the thing you need in order to be the author of your own life. Let me show you what I mean with that. Let's start with a simple question. What kind of thing is a human being? Philosophers use the word agent. Here's the plain version. You're the kind of being who can reason, who can make a promise and be held to it, who can give something up and now for reward later, who can take responsibility and who can find out he was wrong. Now compare that to a thermostat. A thermostat has wants in a way. It wants the room at 20 degrees. But nobody holds a thermostat responsible. Nobody asks it to keep its word. It just isn't an agent, but you are. And notice, all of our deepest words only make sense because we are agents, keeping faith, owing someone, earning something, answering for harm you caused. Take away agency and none of it means anything. So here's the big one. A person isn't just one more unit inside society to be arranged from above. The person is the whole point of the thing. Society exists on his account, not the other way around. So take that seriously and two things follow. And they actually come as a pair. Pull them apart and both of them break away. The first thing, a free society has to let people act, not just comply. There's a real difference between being allowed to move around in whatever gaps an office happens to leave open to you and actually having standing. Here's the line I'd underline. Permission can be taken back. Standing can't. A man who can only act in the space someone else leaves him has some room, sure, but it's borrowed room, and it lasts exactly as long as that someone stays willing to lend it. The second thing, a free society has to let people carry responsibility for what they do, and you can't have one without the other. Agency with no responsibility is just permanent childhood. Responsibility with no agency is just injustice. Blaming a person for something that was never his to decide? A decent system holds both together. It protects the space where you run your own life and it makes you answer for what you do with it. Now, there's a tool I find really useful. Almost every bad political idea comes from one of the three wrong pictures of what people are. Let me be fair to each. They kind of all hold a grain of truth. Picture one, we know better. People are too impulsive, too short-sighted to be trusted, so they need clever institutions to nudge them, correct them, manage them. The grain of truth? Sure. Some people often are short-sighted, but there's a fatal flaw with that. The people doing the managing have the exact same flaws, except they are shielded from the feedback that corrects everyone else. It's Plato's Philosopher Kings in a modern suit, basically, and that argument is so important. It's getting its own episode later on. So let's get on to picture 2. You only matter as part of the group. You get your worth, your meaning, only by serving some bigger political cause. And there's the uncomfortable part. This picture is shared underneath all the hatred for each other by communists, by fascists, and by the National Socialists. The clearest, ugliest example is the Nazi idea of the Volksgemeinschaft, the people's community. There was a literal slogan, "You are nothing, your people is everything." That's the whole picture in 6 words. The individual person dissolved into the group, and that dissolving sold back to you as fulfillment. And the flaw is right there in the slogan. It takes a real particular human being, melts him into the mass, and calls it freedom. Then let's go to picture 3. Picture 3. The human being as a walking shopping cart. A person is just a bundle of wants. And freedom gets used up buying things and satisfying appetites. The flaw here is subtler. It completely misses that being an agent is morally serious. You don't matter because your preferences are king. You matter because you're a person. And personhood comes first, before any system, before any market, and before any state. So now I will present you the claim without any further hatching. Freedom matters because a person is not something to be managed. And here's the twist people find generally hard to swallow. The fact that we are often wrong, weak and short-sighted. That is not an argument against freedom. It's the entire reason freedom matters in the first place. Think it through. A being that could never make a mistake wouldn't need freedom the way we do. It wouldn't need responsibility either. Freedom has to include the freedom to choose badly, because there's no grown-up version of it without that. So when somebody says people might choose wrong, so let's just take the choice away, they're removing the one thing that ever lets people grow up. Real choices, real consequences, and the discipline you only ever learn by living with them. So here's the line I want you to sit with. You can build a society of perfectly protected children. What you cannot do is call it self-governing. But here I owe you one correction, because I don't want to be misunderstood, which we all get at some point. When I say author of your own life, people picture a lone individual inventing himself from scratch, choosing his values out of thin air. Nobody is that. You're shaped long before you ever choose anything. You're born into a family, a language, a place. You inherit duties before you sign a single contract. You get your moral wiring before you can even reason about right and wrong. And there's the flip that matters. That's not a limit on your freedom. It's what makes freedom possible in the first place. You learn to keep promises by growing up around people who keep them. You learn to carry responsibility by being expected to. You learn that other people have rights by being treated as though you have them. Put it bluntly, a child raised among wolves becomes near enough a wolf. We get made into free people by the people around us, which means the things that actually produce free people, families, schools, congregations, clubs, real work, those aren't optional extras. They're the factory that turns out free citizens. And they deserve protection from the very government whose power depends on the citizens they produce. And quickly before someone objects, yes, a right you can't actually use is a thin thing. A right to sign contracts means nothing if you've got no skills and no options. True. But these real capacities are grown by families, by schools, by work, by owning something. They're not printed by an office, and when the state crowds those out, it doesn't strengthen people, it hollows them. So let me finally put the positive version on the table, because we really need a positive version, don't we? First, 2 things freedom is not. It is not no obstacles to whatever I feel like. A man ruled by his own carvings isn't free. He's just swapped one master, other people, for another one, his own urges. And it is not becoming your true self as defined for you by the government. Every single time power gets to define your real freedom and then impose it, it ends up crushing your actual, everyday freedoms in the name of a fake, higher one. It's all those tricks in politics, and one of the bloodiest, basically. So here's the real thing. 4 parts, and they hold each other up. 1, a protected space to make and change your plans. No promise that anyone approves of them. Just that the space is real, locked in by law, and not rewritten every time the political mood shifts. 2, the power to commit, to own things, to sign contracts, to make promises that actually count. If you can't own what you make or pass on what you save, you're not really free, no matter how much day-to-day wiggle room you're handed. 3, living under known rules, not somebody's mood. Look, law always limits you. That's fine. That's not the problem. The test is whether the rules are general, public, steady, and the same for everyone, so you always know where you stand. And 4, nobody gets to dominate anybody. My freedom can't be built on putting you under your arbitrary power. Freedom is not anything goes. It gives no one the right to bully you, or defraud you, or exploit you by smashing through the lines that protect you. So let me put it into one sentence. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's having a real, protected space to offer your own life, the power to make commitments that stick, and rules that stop anyone, the government included, from dominating you. A very long sentence, but a very true one. And notice what parts 3 and 4 both quietly smuggled in. Rules, law. It turns out freedom isn't the opposite of rules. It's built out of the right ones. We're going to come back to that hard. But next time, first I want to nail down a distinction people blur constantly. And getting it wrong wrecks the entire conversation. The difference between being limited by reality, by other people's equals right, and being dominated, bossed around by somebody's arbitrary will. They can feel like the same thing. They are worlds apart. That's the next time. If this made you think, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening.